Pardon the dust. Start that back over.
So we all remember Monster Hunter Wilds, right? One of the most successful, if not the,
Sure.
I think it actually is the most successful game so far this year in terms of copies sold. Well over, I think, 10 million copies. Like, it's crazy successful. It's done very, very, very well. However, even going back to the initial launch, it was pretty rough in terms of optimization. It didn't look particularly good. I remember us watching a Digital Foundry snippet talking about the performance.
To be fair, the first Monster Hunter game, or Monster Hunter World, I should say, not the first Monster Hunter game, but Worlds, it was a little bit rough too at launch, if I remember correctly. It had a few performance issues as well, but they eventually turned around. And I think Wilds is kind of going through the same thing.
It's a Monster Hunter Wilds, and they said it was like really, really, really bad. There were also concerns and frustrations over endgame content, long-term replayability, things like that. And now it seems to fully caught up with them.
I will say that.
When we were first having those conversations at launch, people are playing the game from the start, so they're not concerned with endgame. And if your critique of the game is the endgame, they're not there, so they don't really care, and they'll mass downvote your videos and throw fits if you bring it up. But now I think people have started to hit the wall with endgame content for Monster Hunter, and they're starting to reevaluate.
I mean, it's like that with any single player game. I mean, it's not really a live service game, like, in its entirety. And so I don't ever expect single player games to have like that retention rate that other live service games do get. So, I mean, yeah, eventually people are going to do everything in the game and they're going to stray away from it and they're going to find something else. So, I mean, it's that kind of conversation is so stupid to have and very pointless in my opinion. So, but yeah.
The package that was delivered to them, and they're finding it haunting. Okay, so what is happening right now? Well, if you go to Monster Hunter Wilds, you can see they are overwhelmingly negative in recent reviews. Overall reviews are now stuck at mixed. They, I believe, were floating in mixed for a while, actually. A lot of people were dissatisfied with the performance, and that's been a common thread. But, I mean, as you can see here, informational. Monster Hunter Wilds has peaked at 1.384 million concurrent players on March 1st. And I believe, again, they said they sold like 10 million copies. But if you go through these reviews, they say that it's not booting. They're bringing up worst optimization, game crashes every time I try to use the blacksmith.
And of course, once there's a patch and it fucks some shit up and people can't load up their game, they will boohoo and cry in the Steam comments or the Steam reviews, and it will get totally blown out of proportion. Like, personal opinion. But yeah, no, people are notorious for bitching and whining about this kind of thing. And to be fair, I mean, I guess it does draw some attention to it, but at the same time, I don't think that not really current, but like some developers aren't really going to give a shit about this. If it runs on the majority for people, or if it runs for the majority of people, they're not really going to listen to the minority. But when you have this many people boohooing about it, I think that minority is slowly creeping into the majority.
And the thing is, these are not people who have played a little bit of the game. Like, these are not people who played 10 minutes like the Mind's Eye reviews and were like, it's broken. 287 hours on record. What's also kind of hilarious is this review, 265 hours at the time of review. After they left this negative review, not recommended, they put in another 22 hours of gameplay. Another 22. I hate it. Let me play it for another day. Like nonstop. But this is what we see with a lot of these, 157 hours. And in this case, this is a very fair complaint. He's saying the game will no longer boot up. That's a problem. Obviously, he overcame that because he put another 22 hours in. It was posted May 28th, and then after that, it put another 22 hours. So they fixed whatever his problem was, seemingly. But you see another 157 hours discussing optimization. Like they got into pretty deep into the end game, and they are, to say the least. And now they're posting a negative review about it, leaving this negative review until Capcom fixes their shit. This game itself is amazing, but I don't recommend buying it on PC at the moment. 74 hours. 30.
I don't really think it's, I don't know. For me personally, like my personal opinion on this is, if you leave a negative review because the game isn't running right, and then you put another 20 some hours in, apparently it's not that big of an issue for you because you were able to play it for an extra 20 or so hours. I mean, something's going on there. Either A, they fixed it, or B, they found a workaround. And if there are workarounds, why not post that in the comment or in that review?
Okay, reasonable. This game has less content than Supermarket Simulator free demo. You do hit a wall if you're not interested in grinding the, I forget what they call them. There's a certain type of
monsters,
weapon. Oh, I can't remember what they're called. But if you're not interested in grinding that stuff, then yeah, there's not a ton for you to do in the end game. That's like the whole thing, you know. Not recommended. 344 hours. Capcom has released another unfinished mess of a game, this time above MSRP, and obviously withheld finished content to pad their release schedule. I have a few hours. Yep. Many of which are falling asleep with the game on or AFK hanging out with my wife. And I will likely keep up with events, but won't be grinding this like I did with older titles. Okay. I would advise you wait until they fix things to purchase. There are other games and companies more deserving of your time and money. 35 hours on Monster Hunter Milds, way too short, too easy, too streamlined, too expensive, and runs like trash. Honestly, I do feel it's too short. I also felt it was too easy. You can go back and check my review. I said the same thing. Too streamlined. I'm not sure if I'd say that.
Well, I have not played Wilds. I did play a lot of Monster Hunter World, and I have heard a lot of people say that Wilds is a much easier version of Worlds. I personally think they did that to kind of draw more people in, maybe, that feel like that kind of game is too difficult. But I mean, I could be wrong. But yeah, no.
But I think because it's too easy, it perhaps feels too streamlined because you don't have to use a lot of the systems. And then too expensive. I mean, the fact that it runs like trash, which it does, even still, it doesn't run well, perhaps, you know, adds to the feeling it's too expensive. So this, I think, in general, is probably a pretty fair review. Gameplay is absolutely great, but the kid whose story we follow is not good at all. Yeah, that was one of the weirdest things, is like their obsession with trying to make that kid likable. Yeah. Amazing game. I had fun at 30 FPS. Can only imagine how fun it would be at 60. What a champ. What a champ going through that. Not much commitment to attacks in this one, all sorts of stuff. But they have 230,000 reviews. Lots of reviews. And across all of them, they are sitting, even now, recent ones of the 9,900 recent reviews in the last month, they are overwhelmingly negative, with only 17% of them positive. And of course, from the start of the game's launch, they are at 59% positive. Woof. But here's the question. Does any of this matter? Because they still sold millions upon millions upon millions of copies.
It really
this was
matter
one
to
of
them.
the worst technical launches of a AAA game I think Capcom has ever had. Certainly, I think it's one of the worst technical launches, besides Mind's Eye, of the year. But they still sold 10 million copies. Like, the game's optimization was widely panned, you know, across both console and PC. Monster Hunter Wilds. And yeah, I mean, you can see some of this stuff that they discuss. Some people have, you know, higher tolerance for this stuff, and that's fine. But there are some things where, like, when you boot the game, they ask you to turn on frame generation, which is one of the biggest, girthiest red flags ever. If a game runs so poorly, when you boot it, they're asking you to turn on.
If a game is, like, I agree with him here, as far as, like, if a game developer or a company is telling you to turn on frame generation, that means they need to hide a lot of their optimization issues, and they need the help of AI to try to generate said frames. And that it is not running as intended, It does not just work. And I personally think that you probably shouldn't buy that game. Just because that is a big no-no. The game should not require extra AI generation to be able to develop, the amount of frames it takes to make the game look and run smoothly. I think a lot of these companies have very heavily relied on frame generation for a lot of things, or in a lot of cases, and it does a lot of damage to the overall life cycle of that game, just because as they continue to grow it and do more with it, it relies on it more and more heavily. So that's my personal opinion. I think it's just lazy development relying on this kind of technology. There are plenty of games out there that do not rely on it and don't need it, and they are very well optimized.
On frame generation to just get fake frames to make it playable. That's a big problem. That's a big problem.
Yep.
Not to mention that even if you do that, even if you turn on DLSS quality mode and you're running on a 4090 and stuff, the game still looks like it's been smeared in Vaseline. Like, look at this. This is what he's pointing out.
I could see that the textures in the game were confusingly poor. So many shots had textures like this that were just bafflingly low resolution. I really think this almost looks PS3 level here. And some of the textures, like this character's coat, even though it's directly in front of the camera, look straight up wrong. I presume the coat here is supposed to be white color, but the poorly configured texture compression maybe has made it into a multicolored one with obvious mosaic artifacting. When I
a lot of this is just them trying to cut corners to make the game run smoother, and so they degrade the quality of a lot of the textures and stuff. Some games hide it better than others. That's why you see a lot of games have like this, like a blur effect in the background, or they don't pan the camera all the way around, or they don't intentionally like look up at a scene or in the scenery of a for the game, just to try to keep it from rendering as much. And it helps the game run a little bit smoother. Games that tend to use cinematography to help alleviate some of the stress tend to be better received. You can render this kind of stuff without, basically like hindering on the rest of the experience or the rest of the visual quality, especially like close-ups like this. Like depth of field would do wonders for something like that.
Finally got character control after the long-winded intro, I was greeted by big stutters each and every time I turned the camera while using the RTX 4060 at the default high settings at 1440p DLSS balance mode. Along with the stutters, it is quite easy to see how textures were taking a while to load in after each camera turn, so it looked bad and ran bad on the default high settings with no ray tracing on. As a reminder, these are the settings that the game defaulted to after detecting.
I would also be curious to see what it's like with like AMD hardware, like, because me personally, I run all AMD hardware. I don't get into the hype of NVIDIA, and I know that their drivers tend to be a little bit better. Well, that's kind of a touchy subject right now, but I've never had issues out of any of my games running all AMD, so there's a fucking train, and it's pissing me off. Let's wait a minute, shall we? Are you done now? Okay. But yeah, no, I've always used AMD, and I can run any game just as well as any NVIDIA card can. So like, I think the reliance on NVIDIA, and I know they have a huge like market share, but I also think it's overly inflated. And I would be very curious to see, if it has the same problems with an AMD graphics card. So, but yeah, no, I mean, that's just me. I wonder if it's an NVIDIA problem with our drivers, or if it's, it is legitimately in the game itself.
My hardware. Having tested PC games for so long, I know such strange frame time behavior when turning the camera can often have to do with aspects of streaming things into VRAM. sometimes textures. With that learned experience in mind, I went into the menu to tweak things down when I saw another thing which gave me pause again. The game's high textures, which look poor as I just showed, are definitely not the highest at least. The highest require a separate DLC download that will come out when the game is released on release day. So at least there is a potentially better visual experience.
Another red flag right there.
They don't look great. I just think in general, the game does not look anywhere near as good as it should to be running as poorly as it does. You know, if it were photorealistic, but it ran kind of rough, okay, at least you can understand.
Great example of that is Expedition 33. I mean, that game looks phenomenally well, and there is like little to no optimization issues or performance issues in that game. I played that game from start to finish with everything turned on to max. Never had any issues, no crashes, no nothing. There's a couple bugs here and there, but nothing game breaking, but definitely nothing visually breaking. But yeah, this is just downright sad to see something like this. And the other thing is like the upscaling technology that a lot of these games are trying to push. I think a lot of games rely heavily on that, and they intentionally like deflate the overall quality of the game, hoping that people will use the upscaling. And in a lot of cases, I've noticed that the upscaling actually hinders a lot of the game. You'll see reduced performance or, you know, reduced frame rates or whatever from the upscaling. So, I mean, that's just me.
And like, it doesn't look particularly great, and it runs like ass. Okay.
Yep.
Now, to be fair, this is as of 3 months ago. They still have not made major improvements. I mean, hence
Still though, 3 months ago. I mean, that's really not that long ago.
Look at this. This is on medium textures. This should not qualify as medium texture quality in any AAA game.
That looks like
in 2025.
bottom of the barrel.
Are you kidding me? And this is something we brought up back when the game launched, and we had videos getting mass downvoted because people are like, no, how dare you talk out against almighty Monster Hunter. But now it feels like the community more generally is starting to see, no, it's fair. It's not great. It's really, really not great. And so the viewer or the player counts have started to plummet. And now players are actually moving back to Monster Hunter World. Monster Hunter World now on Steam is realizing higher concurrent player counts than Wilds. People are actually going back to it. Now, discussions over content volume, that happens with every single game. You know, people get to the end game and then they start feeling frustrated by it. It's why it's funny to read some of these reviews and it's like, there's no content. Meanwhile, they have 350 hours in the game and it's like, like what? That's like a lot of content, you know? But what happens is that people will go back to a Monster Hunter Wilds, which has had years and years and years of DLC and expansions even. They're like, yeah, see, this has so much more. This is a better game. And it's like, it has more because it's been supported for years and years. I do still think Monster Hunter Wilds was lacking on overall content. I think it was too easy and it ran like ass. And, you know, I stand by all of that. I still think it's a good game. I still think it's fun. I just don't think it's a masterpiece or anything. But
I think, again, it boils down to they seen the success they were having with Worlds and they thought they could do no wrong. A lot of companies get in their head once they have a very successful game or IP that is released. And I think personally they tried to cut corners and tried to put something out as fast as they could and did not take their time the way they should have, or they did not prioritize certain things over others. And I think that there could have been a lot of potential to make Monster Hunter a much better game than what it is. And there's plenty of other things other than just, oh, here's a new monster. Okay, kill it a few times, get the gear, now you're good. I think that there personally should be something like a boss rush mode or something like that. I don't know if Wilds even has that. I personally haven't played Wilds, so I don't really know. Or, you know, some kind of arena type thing. But yeah, no, there's plenty of things they could put in there to like really flesh it out as far as like the end game, even with a single player game. I mean, there's plenty of things you could do. Just look at some of half these other games that are coming out that, you know, try new things, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I mean, in the long run, I mean, taking risks is very much proven to be more beneficial than playing it safe and not taking said risks. So Personal opinion.
But going back to the question we asked at the top, does any of this actually matter? Like, it's the same exact thing that happened with Jedi Survivor. Do you guys remember that launch? Star Wars Jedi Survivor ran like trash. It relied on FSR upscalers to achieve even semi-decent like performance.
Again, I know I've said it already, but a lot of these companies, a lot of like your AAA companies, are like really trying to use this upscaling and frame generation as a crutch, as a way to not really optimize their game as much, because they expect these technologies to do all the heavy lifting for them. And that is lazy, and it leads to games like this, and it leads to people having problems like this. Stop doing this crap. Why don't you put in a little bit of the work? Your players will buy the game and appreciate you for it in the long run.
But it was artifacted out the ever-living ass, and it just looked pretty bad when you were in motion and when you were especially playing on a larger TV. And it sucks because the game is really, really good. But you know what? They still sold.
There's also a lot of examples of like Final Fantasy 16 running with frame generation, and half the time the frame generation looks worse than playing the game in 30 FPS. It's like a fake 60 FPS, but you notice like how like parts of the game will just teleport like very short distances, like just like basic running and walking animations. It just looks like your legs and your limbs are just kind of like teleporting, and it does leave behind that residual effect like he was pointing out, like almost like a ghost effect. And it does, it looks terrible.
Millions of copies. So why would they feel the need to change it? You know, like, why would they need to make adjustments? Why would they need to listen to the feedback and delay the next game if you're still going to buy it? Like, it's the one thing about Ubisoft games. Ubisoft games, they rush them, they run poorly or look poor, and then nobody buys them. So they are forced next time to delay the game and polish it up so it runs better. That's how this is supposed to work. But with some games, I think maybe brand loyalty, look at that. Brand loyalty overcomes all of that critical thought to the point where it's like, no, I love Star Wars, I'm going to buy it regardless. Or I love Monster Hunter, I'm going to buy it regardless, even though it runs like ass.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with Monster Hunter Wilds, is people still bought it. PS5.
Yeah, they buy into the hype, or they buy into an IP because they like the previous ones, and so they're going to buy this one no matter what. Oh, well, I'll just play it at lower settings. It'll be fine. It's still a good game because I like the last one. Don't do that. That's a terrible idea. Like, you're just wasting your money, and you're just giving these companies more of an incentive to do it down the road.
Performance mode, 640p, 648p at times, 648p, upsampled to 1440, and it looks like it. It looks like it. Dude, it's madness. It's madness. But they got away with it with Jedi Survivor because people still bought it.
You're trying to... They're upsampling it by like a little over like it's like 2.2x. You're trying to blow it up by that much. Like, that's terrible. You're just asking for things to look and run like ass when you're upsampling or upscaling that by that much.
And way more people even bought Monster Hunter Wilds despite it running poorly. And now, you know, they're coming around to it and being like, hey, after 200 hours, I've run out of content. You know what? I'm realizing now it's okay to be critical. And you know what? I'm upset about a lot of this. And it's good. I'm glad we're having the conversation now instead of never. But it is frustrating, I think, that we're only bringing this stuff up and talking about it as like a broader Monster Hunter fan base after they made hundreds of millions of dollars on it. Because I don't think frankly, I don't think they give a damn at this point. It's like,
no, they don't. They got their money and ran. That's a lot of these companies do this. do what they can to make the turd look shiny once it gets on the shelf, and then once it's bought and paid for, well, you bought it, so sorry about you. Bye.
It's like, yeah, they rushed it out. It needed another 6 months or 9 months in the oven. Like, it needed more time, but they rushed it out, and then they got rewarded for it. You know,
Exactly.
It's why it's really crucial, I think, for everybody to kind of hold everybody's feet to the fire equally with this stuff, so that it's just not tolerated. Because, you know, we've jokingly said there's things that some companies can get away with that others can't. Like, you know, a company can get away with putting out something that runs poorly so long as it's in a you know, big franchise, or the core game is a certain way, and, you know, the fan base is willing to tolerate it. And Call of Duty is probably the worst offender of this. Like, every year people hate the new Call of Duty release, and they still sell 35 million copies. You know, I hate this. Here's my money. You know, it's so stupid, but it happens all the time with some of these big IP.
People just love eating shit. That's all it is. They buy it in the hopes that, oh, this one will be different. They'll learn their lesson. No. They sell it because they know that you'll buy it, because you're easily manipulated. And because it's Call of Duty and everybody and their fucking brother thinks Call of Duty is the greatest thing ever. But I won't go into that rant.
But who knows? Maybe now, like, if they announce an expansion or something and people don't buy it, maybe that'll wake them up and they need to fix it. But yeah, or Madden's another one. But realistically, like, if they announce the
Basically
expansion for
annual,
Monster Hunter,
anything
and
annual,
it's like, hey, coming
stop.
out next summer, here's the big expansion for Monster Hunter Wilds, and it's going to be $40 and it's going to be big and crazy, I think a lot of these people are still going to buy it anyways.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, let's be
definitely will.
I don't think an expansion can fix it, though. I think an expansion can fix the content issues if they can add a ton of content. I think that can fix the content frustrations.
Not sure about that.
It doesn't magically fix performance critiques and things, obviously. But clearly, a lot of people are willing to tolerate that. Like, some of these reviews that are complaining about the performance of the game, they're complaining about it, but they have 300 hours. So clearly it wasn't that big of a deal, because they were able to play the game for 344 hours with those performance issues. So if they like what they're...
I mean, once you put that much time into it and you're just griping about it, I think it, especially like for the people that, like, at time of release, they, you know, left a review or whatever, like, that you've got 100 hours in, you leave a review because you're mad because the game is running poorly or whatever, and then you put in another 100 hours after that. Obviously it's not that big of a deal because you found a way around it, or you just learned to deal with it because you just really like that game. It makes that critique sound less valid and less harder to take that review seriously in that case, just because of the fact that, you know, it's, if it was really that big of an issue, you would have moved on to something else, or, you know, whatever. But yeah, no, that's just me. I mean, my personal, like, when I'm looking at these reviews and stuff, I look at, you know, when they posted it, you know, what it is they're saying, and did they continue to play it afterwards? Is it really that big of an issue? Like, you know, if I don't have to worry about this kind of stuff till, like, you know, like 200 hours in, 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to put that much time into a game unless I really, really enjoy it, and it's got to really draw me in. So, my personal take. I know it's probably an unpopular opinion, but that's just me.
They're playing, they're willing to put up with the bad performance demonstrably for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, it's I think for a lot of these people, it's the content that's frustrating them. And, you know, they reached the end game and they found the end game dissatisfying, which is why they're moving back to World. But I think if they release an expansion, they will come back because the content issue will be fixed. And just like they did for the first 300 hours, they'll tolerate the performance issues. You know, I think that's the way Capcom is going to deal with it, because they'll put that out. They'll get $40 a pop for it. And then, you know, performance will still probably be pretty bad, but they're just going to keep rolling with it, and people are going to give them even more money, and it's just going to be the same moving forward. You know, nothing will change till people start voting with their dollar. Well, yeah. And I mean, I think again, the difficulty for them at this point is just that they already got everybody's money. They already did the thing. They already made millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. So even if people are throwing a fit now, they're
Take
like,
the money
yeah,
and run.
you go for it. Downvote on Steam. Who cares? You already bought it. You know?
True. All right. Yeah, that was a good video. But yeah, no, I think it's becoming more of a trend with especially like AAA titles that they rush the game, put it out, and they might put a couple like little hot fixes or day one patches or whatever. And then, you know, just kind of abandon it until an expansion comes out. And then they might do some fixes or changes or whatever. And that's about it. They really don't have a need or a want to give a shit about it because they've already got their money from it. And so all these optimization fixes are not on the list of priorities for them. Their main priorities is pumping out another DLC so they can shovel out some more money. That's where the priorities really are for them. So, but then again, if you're complaining about something and then you're still putting in more time after the fact, I personally don't think that your complaint is really all that valid. Yeah. Let me know what you think. Do you think you should be able to gripe and complain about said things, you know, after so many hours into a game? Is there, I don't know, if you guys played it, just let me know. And tell me if you're having the same issues or anything like that. So yeah, give me just a second here. Sorry, just trying to check something real quick. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, but yeah, that's, I mean, outside of the optimization issues and people complaining about lack of content, I mean, that's just a normal thing. All these single players go through it, and it shouldn't be something that should be in like a complaint about a single player game. Is, yeah, single players are only going to have so much stuff you can do because eventually you're going to do it all, and then what? Well, a normal person will tell you, go find another game to play. Go find something else to spend your money on. If you're really that bored and you have nothing better to spend your money on, there are lots of gotcha games. But yeah, that's my personal opinion on it. But that was a good video. I'll go ahead and link it in the chat. So you guys can give it a like and all that good jazz.